Welcome to Ask the Lynnwood Cop. I'm Teresa Whipple, your host. Sergeant Cole Langdon, it is tax season.
It is. It's tax season.
And that means that sometimes people find that when they go to file their taxes, somebody has already filed them and it's not them. So there's a fraud issue there. There's also an issue of what do you do to maybe prevent that from happening in the first place? What can you tell us?
Sure. Tax fraud has been a big issue in this community. Last year we had several large employers that were, their data was breached, and it resulted in quite a few people being victimized by tax fraud. First of all, just so people are aware, your local police agency is not going to be responsible for investigating and prosecuting anybody who has taken advantage of you and made you a victim of fraud. It's going to be the IRS, and so they're the ones that you're going to need to report to. Normally how it's going to be triggered that there's even been an event where you've been victimized is the IRS will receive your tax info after they've already received it earlier in a fraudulent form, and they'll notify you and say, hey, this is the second tax return that we received this year for you. You might want to check things out. And at that point, they'll begin communicating with you. And they might ask you to go to your local agency and obtain a police report. It's more just going to be an information report at that time, just so they have some way to kind of a date stamp and time stamp as to when things happened. A couple things you can do to really take care of some good preventive measures that you can take is check your credit out once a year. There's freecreditreport.com. There's also creditkarma.com. And they allow you to check with all three credit reporting bureaus once a year for free of charge. And things that will let you know is if anybody's trying to open up lines of credit in your name using your social security number. And if so, that's going to be a huge red flag that you're going to want to take preventative action at that point. You can actually freeze your lines of credit. You can actually make it where it's impossible for anybody to open up a line of credit in your name or to go about making any large purchases in your name by freezing credit. Doing that, though, can be a bit of a tricky issue. To give you an example, your insurance company once a year likes to run credit checks on you, and that would not allow them to have access to that credit information. And so you might start receiving phone calls from your insurance company where you're now going to have to take a couple extra steps so that they can have access to that information. Same thing is going to happen with your credit card companies to find out if they can now raise your rates. If your credit score has risen up to a level where they now feel, or drop down to a level where they feel they can adjust your rates either up or down, it's going to trigger an alert where you might now receive alerts saying, hey, somebody's checking on your credit score or someone's making inquiries into your credit. So you're going to have to be a little more on the ball with that. It's a good preventive measure. It's going to require a little more of having your hands on involved in your financial life of what's going on.
That's not a bad thing, though.
It's not a bad thing. So a little extra effort could save you a lot of pain down the road. So creditkarma.com and freecreditreport.com are two great websites that will allow you to have access to that information. And then you could just Google credit freezing, or actually, I wrote down notes on this, requesting fraud alerts. So if anybody were to try and make an application, you will now receive alerts to that effect. And very effective at preventing things or having an early intervention in this process. So if you can stop it before major purchases are made, and you can lock that credit down a little bit and protect your information a little more effectively, you're going to be good to go.
Okay, and just mail fraud in generally sometimes results in IRS
It does.
Fraud filings too, right? Like
Absolutely.
if you have a mailbox that isn't locked, and if a thief gets the mail out, they can use that to steal your identity.
It's really important. Your information is out there, and so it's really important that you are keeping an eye on your credit to know if anybody is trying to make applications in your name or open up lines of credit. So it's really important that you keep your fingers on the pulse. Your information is accessible in this computer age that we live in now. The information's out there. So really important that you have your fingers on the pulse of what's going on in your credit life.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll be back again soon with another episode of Ask the Lynnwood Cop.